back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in. Much love. Right, okay, today's video is a little different to maybe the normal content you would expect to see on my channel, but it's still an important video and it's one I've been thinking about doing for a little while. And those close to me will know about my journey with MS and the impact it's had on my life and how I overcome things and just how I've managed to live a relatively normal, healthy life after my diagnosis 11 years ago. So that's what today's video is about. It's about how I've used diet and exercise to manage my MS for 11 years. Now, before I start, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not giving advice. I'm just simply sharing my story, my journey, and if anybody gets any kind of support or any comfort from it, then I've done a good job. So I just wanted to get that out there first of all. Right, okay, so just a little bit about the background of my personal story. Back in 2009, I started experiencing dizziness and coordination issues. I was unable to get my toothbrush to my mouth and stuff like that. And this went on for a couple of weeks. I didn't tell anyone, I didn't do anything. I just kind of plodded along. I was quite stressed at the time. I had a lot going on. Career-wise, I was in between different jobs. And to cut a long story short, I hadn't even told my partner at the time or my parents, and I must have mentioned it to my dad, and he was like you need to go and see a doctor. This is not a joke. This is quite serious. This is not a normal sort of thing that should be happening. So we went down to the local hospital, and they took me in for a CT scan, and that came back clear. So I was like, that's fantastic, great, perfect. Can I go and crack on now? Like, no big deal. And I saw a fantastic doctor, and he said, look, I've just got this feeling that sometimes the CT scans do not pick up as much as we would see on an MRI. Would you mind staying in, and we will do an MRI scan on you in the morning, and then we can maybe assess and have a look if we see anything different on that. So I did, I stayed in, and that's basically when the nightmare started. The following morning they took me for an MRI scan and it showed I had a lesion. At that point it was one lesion on my brain, and I'll never forget that moment of him coming into the ward that I was in. I was on like a day ward, and I was sitting there with my dad, and I remember him just saying, we found a lesion, we don't know what it is. And I just remember, obviously the thing that came to my mind was, oh my god, it's a tumour. I broke down, I was in pieces. And that kind of was the start of my 2-month stay in hospital. 2 months is a long time. I was sort of back and forward as a day patient, but I have to go back every single day to have intravenous medication because there was a feeling that it could be a brain infection as well, and they wanted to monitor how I'd get along. Anyway, no answers were coming to light, and I think I was about 3 days prior having a brain biopsy, that they would take a piece of my brain and they put it under a microscope and it would tell them what was wrong with me. I was lucky that actually, I think it was a day before, my doctor said, look, we're just going to take you down for another routine MRI just to see if it's got any bigger or what the state of play is. So I was like, okay. I went down to have this MRI. Again, I remember him coming in. I could always see by his face he wasn't great, and he turned around and he said, Victoria, that lesion is still there, but we found another 10. And I just remember thinking, I don't even think I took in the information. I'm thinking, hang on, I've gone from having 1 lesion to now you're telling me I've got 10. But in the plus side of that, at that point they'd ruled out it being cancer or a tumour or anything like that, because there were so many of them. And this is when MS first kind of was mentioned to me on that level. It hadn't been mentioned to me before because I don't think the lesion they initially saw presented that way. Anyway, again, because this could be a really drawn out story, we'll get to it. I was kind of told at that point, in fact I was referred to the Queen Square National Hospital, and they are one of the top neurological hospitals in the world. So I felt really privileged to be going there, and I was seeing a professor. He was an MS expert at the time, because this now was floating about that the likelihood was that's what I had. And I had some lumbar punches done. I think I had 7 in total. And if anyone's had a lumbar puncture, you will know how excruciatingly painful that is, where they just take the fluid from the spine, and they look for certain antibodies or things that will detect certain illnesses. I know for meningitis and stuff like that, they would use one of those procedures. Anyway, it was horrific. So I'm at this national hospital again. I've gone with my parents, and the conversation went a little bit like this. Victoria, we believe you've got MS. Now, the fact is, normally with people who have MS, in 10 years, they would end up in a wheelchair, and in 20 years, they would be bedridden. And I just broke down. I remember thinking, oh my God. And then this doctor turned around and said, but Victoria, we are coming a long way in medicines and different advances that we have. So there's more hope for people that have MS, and we can do an awful lot of stuff and prescribe you things that will increase your quality of life and hopefully decrease the amount of relapses and the severity of your disease. Anyway, he said, look, I'm going to leave you a while to just digest this, and I'm going to come back and speak to you and your parents. He left the room, and I just remember sort of sitting there thinking, right, just give me whatever you can give me, I will take it. And I have to credit my dad for this, because it was my dad who turned around to me at the time and he said, look, Vic, you've had one doctor sit here and tell you this is going to be your prognosis in life and this is what's going to happen to you, and you're sitting there and accepting it as your truth. Now, where medicine is fantastic for certain things, he said, look, you're a young girl. I was like 26, I think, at the time. He said, look, what you need to do is maybe have a look at your life, look at what you eat, what you do, your whole mental state, and maybe think about what you can do for you before you go down this road of taking drugs. And, you know, I owe probably my whole life to my dad, because had I started those drugs, I'm not sure where I'd be now. I'm not sure if I'd be as able as I am. I don't know. And that's the whole point of this video. I'm just going to tell you what I've done. At that point, I started researching, and I come across a doctor called Dr. Roy Swank. Again, if anyone's got MS or has done any research, they'll know of this doctor. He was a fantastic doctor. And he had a protocol that he would use with his patients that had MS, and he also had MS. So he was speaking from a perspective of someone who actually lived with the disease and was able, as a physician, to treat and implement certain things. So he came with the Swank diet, which in essence was a low fat, low saturated fat, no red meats, and low fat and protein, low, believe it or not. He would have certain food groups that you could eat as much as you'd want, and there were certain things you couldn't have. You could not have milk. You could not have full fat milk. You could have skim milk. You could have not anything over a certain percent of fat. And I started following this diet. I'm not going to go too much into that. I will put a link below for anyone who's interested in having a look at the book, which is amazing. But yeah, it changed my whole life. So I started religiously following his protocol, and I started feeling better, because I had not, the relapse I'd had at that point was actually quite debilitating. It left me with severe vertigo. I couldn't coordinate things. I was really in a bad way. I temporarily couldn't drive. It was just horrendous. So I started following that, and when I started to feel better, I decided, right, I'm going to now start exercising a little bit, because believe it or not, although I dabbled in exercise, I hadn't really embraced it. I think it was something that I kind of take it or leave it. And it was weird, because at the time, my partner, who's now my husband, he was a personal trainer. So I had all of that at my fingertips, and I never really kind of understood this whole thing about training. Oh God, like, I could be doing something else. Like, why, you know? Anyway, I started to embrace it, and I've never looked back. And although I have not followed the diet properly in the last 11 years, I've had times where I've got better, and essentially I've started eating what I want. I'd always have a relapse, and even at the moment, actually, I'm currently going, I can't feed myself or write with the right hand at the minute. I'm really struggling, and it's been about 3 weeks now. So I've gone back on the protocol, the diet, and I'm watching everything I eat. Obviously, this lockdown doesn't help with mental state of mind, because how you think mentally and your thought process is actually paramount in how you recover from this illness, because it's a devastating illness. There was lots of things I did, like For instance, I found out I had the PIP breast implants. That was a scandal that broke in, I think it was 2011, so it was a few years after my diagnosis. So I had those implants removed, and they were out for about 2 years, and I felt my MS was actually much better. I had no relapses in that time, but being naive and stupid, I felt that I needed them put back. So I went to Belgium and I had breast augmentation done again, and then my MS from that point has kind of taken an up and down kind of process, really. So, you know, being vain and really caring about what I looked like was probably my downfall. That's another video. I will do a video on my PIP breast implant story. Again, that's another really important one that I need to put out there. I think that you'll find interesting. Again, it's something I haven't really spoken about before on any level, but it's an important one, and it kind of ties into this story. But yeah, so that's my long story cut short. And I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys, any of you that are suffering with any kind of autoimmune condition or degenerative disease, which is what multiple sclerosis is that before you go down a route of maybe lots and lots of drugs or immune suppressants and stuff like that, maybe just see if there is anything you can do first. And if it doesn't help, then there is a place for those things. And like I've always said, I don't rule them out. If there comes a time in my life where I need those things, I'm more than happy to go along that path, because I need to keep myself well. I have 3 kids. But right now, I feel that I'm managing this as best I can. And look, there are some really dark times where I am in such a bad place, not just physically, but mentally. But I've got a good support network. And again, that's really, really important. So I will put the link in the description below for the Swank Diet book if you guys are interested in having a look. And also some vitamins that I take and supplements that I've been taking that I find really help as well. I haven't gone too much into those yet, but I will again put links to those below. These are things that I would just supplement alongside my diet that just help me recover a lot quicker than I would maybe without those things. So I take, just in a nutshell, vitamin D, vitamin C, kelp, which is a seaweed, so it's an algae. I take B12. Have I left anything out? If I have, I will be putting it in the description box. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening to my story, and I really hope that somebody out there has taken some sort of comfort in knowing that there are other things you can do. It's not a death sentence, and you know, we've got a life like everyone else. Thank you, guys. See you next time.